Welcome to the FML podcast, the podcast on a mission to uncover actionable insights, explore the latest trends, and to catalyze your fintech's growth. Join Growth Gorilla's founder and managing director, Shamir Sachdev, and some of fintech's hardest-hitting marketers and leaders.
Lovely. So welcome everyone to today's episode of the FML podcast. Today I'm joined by Jeff Parker, Managing Director at Marqeta. Jeff, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me.
For everyone listening, Jeff, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey so far.
Sure. Well, you can probably tell that I'm from the UK from my accent, but I have spent quite a lot of time overseas. So I spent a couple of years in the US, 12 years in Sydney, 4 years in Hong Kong, kind of following my career. Started in kind of investment banking and consulting world before heading to Australia and doing M&A for Macquarie, the Australian investment bank. We were doing on-balance sheet acquisitions in the kind of the retail financial services space. And one of the businesses that we invested in was a business called OzForex, which is now known as OFX, which is a international payments business. So a bunch of us from the Macquarie side moved across into the management team, and I became COO in that business, which is kind of first venture into fintech. We grew that business from probably about 35, 40 people up to about 300 and listed that on the Australian stock market. And then post that, I was approached by a business in the same space called World First, which is a UK international payments business. I headed over to Hong Kong to be their MD for APAC there. And we did a huge amount of business in China, providing kind of virtual bank accounts for merchants that were selling on marketplaces like Amazon overseas, and kind of did a few different roles there, but eventually became the CEO. And we sold that business to the Ant Group, so the owners of Alipay, the Chinese super app. Spent a few years kind of integrating that business fully into kind of the broader Ant world and the Alibaba world. And then I left there and joined Marqeta September last year. So I'm about 6 months into my Marqeta journey.
For those listeners who haven't come across Marqeta before, who's not too sure in terms of what they do and who they are, do you want to kind of give us the almost like the elevator pitch for Marqeta and your kind of areas of specialism? Sure.
So Marqeta's a US fintech. They really kind of created a category called modern card issuing and processing, and really what they do is they're a cloud-based, cloud-native, API-first, developer-first business providing infrastructure for businesses to build debit, prepaid, credit card programs, just kind of taking the complexity and time out of that kind of process. And so we now have, I guess, some of the world's most innovative brands that are on our platform. We serve Uber, Klarna, Square, Instacart, DoorDash, Moss, Bill.com, a whole range around kind of that fintech and neobank space, expense management, on-demand delivery, BNPL. And that kind of, where we've grown a specialization, very much US focused for the first few years, but we're now expanding overseas and we operate in 40 markets. And that's kind of where my role sits in. I head up international. So everything outside of the Americas, really taking what's been successful in the US and helping to kind of build that and grow that success overseas.
You kind of got sort of 3 or 4 sort of, legs to your stool: data residency, buy now, pay later, embedded finance and lending 3.0. If I'm honest, I'd like to touch upon all of those, because you're kind of at the forefront of all of those areas, but almost like starting right at the beginning. What is data residency?
I mean, just data generally obviously has always been critical, but I guess is becoming increasingly important for customers. And I think we look at it around data privacy and how do we kind of maintain security around kind of the personal data that we hold. And also data residency kind of looks at where that data is stored, so which country it's stored, how it's stored, whether it's encrypted, etc. So different countries have different regulations, but it's super important that I guess we understand those and manage our customers' data in a way that they expect it to be managed. So yeah, it's all about, I guess, building that kind of an architecture to ensure that there's security about all the data that we carry.
I think obviously, data privacy, as you mentioned, it's becoming more and more focused on that. It's becoming stricter and stricter. How do you navigate requirements when operating globally?
I think it is becoming more complex. I think people expect more from their service providers. I think there's more regulation around it. I think as technology has evolved and, on the positive side around, you can do so much more with data these days, but that also puts so much more pressure on the expectation to look after it. So, I mean, we as a business are, like our customers, subject to all of these data and privacy requirements. And obviously in Europe, that's very much focused around GDPR. We've always taken the view that, we're the custodians of our customers' data, and therefore we've kind of architected our platform in a way that's always kind of consistent with those rules and kind of regulations and standards throughout the world. But we also take the view that, regulation can't cover everything. And so we're also looking to see where we can take those kind of standards even further, because, some clients have different needs. And an example of that is it's not regulation at the moment to store European data in Europe, but we know that a lot of our customers would prefer it to be there. So, we opened a European data center at the end of that last year to kind of make sure that we can maintain the sensitive data within the region, which we know a lot of our customers want. So I think it's a constant evolution and approach to data that we take.
Thinking about the growth side of things, I mean, what role does data residency play in Marqeta's international expansion strategy?
It's critical, I think, for that. I mean, trust is, I guess, at the foundation of all of our kind of customer relationships, and we generally take a kind of a true partnership approach. The fact that we're kind of a B2B business, we're successful if our clients are successful. So we're always trying to, I guess, understand and exceed the expectations, and we have to monitor and understand what kind of the data requirements are in those different countries. So I guess that's the foundation. What's interesting, I think, with data is as we get more sophisticated with data and some of the opportunities around hyper-personalization and tailoring services to meet the needs of customers to really deliver, I guess, enhanced customer experiences, it's kind of in opposite to kind of what data residency or the data privacy is trying to do. Is so we're constantly having to think about how do we encrypt and tokenize data to make sure that it's not corrupted. But at the same time, we're also trying to look at how do we create kind of single digital interoperable identities that allow us to create those tailored services. So we spend a lot of time kind of balancing those two and working together. And fundamentally, that drives a lot of our growth, because the more use cases that we can serve for our customers, the more that we can help them grow.
And are you finding some regions or some areas are very, very focused on this data residency piece? What I mean to say is that, are we seeing growth in areas like Africa and Asia, Latin America, or is it very, very much US, Europe, Southeast Asia?
Over time, I think almost all regions have increased their focus on this, but I think there's been different speeds at which they've progressed their kind of thinking around this. I think Europe is, again, with GDPR, I think was at the forefront of this and has driven a lot of the standards around this, and their standards are slightly different to some of the others. I think some of those more developing countries are probably a bit further behind in terms of kind of, I think they're more of a watch and follow type strategy. Canada's probably in that bucket as well, but definitely I think the US and Europe lead the way on that kind of way, and lead the way in the way of kind of from a regulation perspective.
Just want to jump into that the almost like the second leg of your stool, which is buy now, pay later, which has had a lot of headlines recently. There's been a lot of talk about that and regulation, etc. What's Marqeta's role in buy now, pay later, and how are you adapting to that trend?
So Marqeta's, I guess, very active in the BNPL space. We power some of the world's leading BNPL players. Some of our clients are Klarna, Afterpay, Affirm, Zip. So Scala play in Italy. So we're I guess the forefront of that. Now, what we're trying to do is provide, I guess, a solution that enables BNPL providers to provide their end users with more innovative services and experience beyond kind of those traditional BNPL offerings. We're constantly looking at how do we evolve our technology to support those use cases. Just an example of what we're doing is, if you're a customer and you're on an online checkout experience and there's a BNPL offering, in real time we're spinning up a virtual single-use card off the back of an authorization through one of the BNPL providers. We're then able to use that card to make the transaction and then pass on that kind of BNPL product through to the customer. So it's really kind of embedding that seamless experience and enhancing the proposition, which gives access to the customer as well as being useful to the merchant as well. So we think there's a huge use case for the product, and we're excited to be part of that industry.
Obviously, one of the questions that is, or one of the topics that's been circulating is about responsible lending practices. And we've had, a number of guests on. We've had Zilch on, we've had, Financial on, who are kind of anti-BNPL. Zilch, very pro, and gave a compelling argument for it. How does Marqeta ensure responsible lending practices and for the BNPL product?
I mean, obviously, Marqeta's not a lender. We're just a technology provider. So we're kind of really enabling some of these innovative use cases. We clearly see from consumers that there's a demand for this product, and not only from consumers, I think increasingly from businesses. So we, I guess, work with our customers to ensure that we're providing them with the right solutions to provide the product to their customers. And so we'll continue to operate in that space. But it's difficult to know how, I guess, that proposition will evolve in the future. But obviously, we stay very much aligned with kind of regulations and market trends to make sure that we're, I guess, meeting the consumer's needs.
I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned B2B for buy now, pay later. There's a number of operators that have popped up, and I've seen, a couple of firms get seed funding. It looks like a space that's probably going to blow up, I would say. How do you think buy now, pay later will develop? What do you think the future of it will be?
I think that there's clearly a lot of press around BNPL, or there has been, and I think we'll likely see that continue until, I guess, the market finds an equilibrium as where there's a good balance. But I think what's indisputable is that, there's a demand for the product, and consumers and I would say increasingly businesses are like the simplicity of the model. So I think there's probably still some further pivots or iteration of the model to come over time. And I think, different regions or regulators will kind of take a view as to, how they perceive BNPL as a product. But, I see it being, here for a long time. And I think BNPL in multiple forms actually has been here for the last 50 years. It's just, been called different things. And there's always been a need for that type of product, which some consumers find easier to understand and more beneficial for them than maybe traditional, or alternative products.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the obvious example is credit cards. I mean, they've been around for as long as I've been alive. Well, you mentioned obviously creating the functionality for these BNPL providers, Uber, Klarna, at checkout, which kind of moves us on nicely onto sort of like the third leg of your stool, which is embedded finance. It's obviously a huge area of focus for yourself. Very simplistically, could you explain embedded finance? How does sort of Marqeta position itself in this space, and what do you think the opportunities are for you?
It's definitely the buzzword at the moment. I think, it's a bit like fintech. Everyone did fintech before fintech became a thing. And in some degree, it's the same as embedded finance. I mean, you probably ask 3 different people and you get 3 different definitions. But for me, simply, I just look at embedding or placing kind of a financial transaction or experience within the customer journey of a non-financial services kind of product. So, I mean, that could be in the early days simply providing online checkout on a marketplace, for example. So you don't have to leave the website to make the payment. Where in the olden days you may have had to. Still today on many B2B marketplace channels, you have to go and do. You click buy on the website, and then you have to go to your own kind of bank account and make an account-to-account transfer to purchase that. And there's huge drop off even on some B2B marketplaces today. I think something like 65% of people click buy don't actually then make the payment. So embedded finance is about really taking the friction out of that experience. I think is the ultimate probably embedded finance, which many people probably use is Uber. In that in the olden days you would get a taxi, you'd get to your destination, you'd have to fiddle around in your wallet to either get your card out or to get some cash out. Whereas now you step out without even thinking about the payment, and it's just done. That's kind of the ultimate embedded finance. And I think as you evolve, almost every single product or service has a cost associated to it. And so there's a payment that needs to be done. And there's huge opportunity, I guess, both personally and from the Marqeta's perspective, to reduce friction and make those experiences much more user-friendly, which have multiple benefits. It's much better for the consumer, but it's also better for the business. It means that their kind of success rates and engagement and satisfaction with customers goes up. So I guess that's how I would define it. In terms of Marqeta, we've been in embedded finance before. It was called embedded finance for years, and I think some of the things we do in BNPL and expense management, kind of in on-demand delivery, are great examples of embedded finance use cases. But we do think those use cases and the opportunity will kind of accelerate over the next few years.
I've kind of found myself when I'm using products and apps and whatnot, if they don't have an option to pay there and then, and they've, I think the one for me is that if I've got to put in my card details, manually, I think, make an effort here. It's like, I can't remember what it was I was using the other day, and I thought, this is a lot of effort. But I think that for me kind of is giving me the indication of, right, we've got, penetration into the market. We've got a lot of apps out there using it. And I think, for products that don't have that solution, they're actually going to fall behind the marketplace where their competitors are offering easier solutions to pay.
100%. I mean, we're all busy people. You're trying to multitask all the time, and if you can't kind of get to the end of something immediately, you say you'll come back to it 5 minutes later, but you don't. And Amazon's one-click payment is again, there's another great example. That's part of the reason it's so successful is because there's just no friction. I was talking to someone last week around where this could go, and I think great use cases like in the automobile industry. I think there's loads of opportunities to just embed payments within kind of the screen in the car. So you pay for your petrol without leaving the car on the screen. You can buy your car insurance just by clicking a button on your screen. You can pay for your car service just by clicking a button on the screen. There's a whole bunch of stuff around that space, which I think we'll see big enhancements. And actually, I think just yesterday Mercedes announced that they just launched some in-car payment capability for Netflix in-car. So loads of use cases. The challenge over the next couple of years is really thinking those through and delivering them in that kind of enhanced experience for the customer.
It's funny you mentioned the automobile industry. Obviously, the headline prior to Mercedes was a couple of months back was BMW taking more of a SaaS model with their, I think, was it heated seats?
Oh, okay.
So I think you're going to pay a monthly subscription now to get heated seats with BMW. And I'm thinking, well, if the car industry goes down that path, embedded finance has to follow to make it frictionless and to actually monetize, that proposition.
There's a really good one on the whole kind of driver taxi thing as well, and the earned wage access piece. A taxi driver, drops someone off, like you and me, it's a £20 fee. The car company takes their kind of percentage of that, and effectively your wage of that is £15. I mean, rather than waiting until the end of the week or the end of the month to get paid, you should be able to just click a button and get paid that £15 immediately. And I think there's so many use cases to kind of embed that financial transaction, within services. I think, and brand affiliation, I think is at an all-time high. And I think people would prefer in many cases to have a relationship with some of those brands rather than the traditional financial services.
Freelancers and marketplaces and all of these things. That kind of sort of always brings back down to the conversation of, is the fintech bubble over and how far we yet to go. But when I have kind of conversations with people like yourself, I realise we're still in the early stages here. There's so much more to do, and I think we can start to see the glimmers of that in places like China, where they've kind of got these super apps that have basically people operate their entire lives on, which we don't really have over here in the UK and they don't really have in the US. So I think that's going to be tremendously interesting.
Yeah. We have lots of debates about super apps, actually. Obviously, because I worked for Alipay as well. My personal view, I don't know whether it's right or not, is I don't think we'll ever get the super app here. I think that the phone is almost a super app. I think we've almost passed that bridge. I'm not sure that apps, like your Netflix or your Disney or whoever it is, are going to be prepared to put their kind of apps within another app to lose that control of that relationship with the customer. But the next few years will be quite interesting in that space.
If there's pressure and demand, they may have no choice. You look at the music industry, I think the first couple of labels that signed on to Apple Music, they made that decision willingly, but then, the other labels almost had no choice. And I think Steve Jobs was famous for saying, I'm selling it for this price and you've got no choice. And then that was kind of it, really. Will Disney have a choice if that's how users now want to, expect to consume media and that's how they want to pay for it?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it'll be interesting to see where that takes us.
It's funny how it all ultimately ends up boiling down to the least number of clicks and fundamentally user experience in the end, which is, kind of loops really nicely back down to sort of Marqeta, which is fundamentally what you're making easier. Just want to touch upon, I suppose, that fourth and final leg, which is lending 3.0. What is Lending 3.0? What's Marqeta's role within this? Because obviously you're not a lender yourself.
Yeah, Lending 3.0, I guess it's just kind of trying to demonstrate kind of the evolution of different types of lending and how technology is evolving some of those lending experiences. I mean, I think, as you say, Marqeta is not a lender. We're not kind of lending to consumers. We're an enabler. We're empowering our customers to use our platform to really create these kind of unique and innovative lending services. Specifically, Marqeta is a market leader in terms of issuing cards, whether that be physical, virtual, or kind of tokenized cards to businesses or consumers. And those virtual cards or tokenized cards, allow lenders to kind of borrow instantly on approval from the customer, and we can in real time provision a card that can be used immediately. There's kind of been providing that kind of lending capability to them, and that kind of just in time funding is super, super important to both the consumer who has a need, but also to our client to kind of be top of mind and really kind of exceeding the expectations. If you're a consumer who's kind of driving a car and you've just broken down on the edge of the motorway and you need to pay some sort of bill or something and you haven't got you can kind of apply online, get a loan like immediately, etc., and we can give you access to that cash to make that payment, which is I think super valuable to the customer. I think the other thing which we do is we capture an amazing amount of kind of data which is kind of really rich around the transaction, and that helps our customers build a really kind of solid profile about people that are kind of their customers and applying for loans. And so the Marqeta kind of platform is a really good facilitator to that, helping them make better decisions, more informed decisions, allowing them to make more tailored kind of products and services for the customers, and ideally reducing kind of that exposure to bad debt and to fraud. So I think it's really that 3.0 is really next genesis of digitalization of lending.
I recently opened up a Capital on Tap account.
Nice.
That point around, if you're stuck by the highway, I wasn't stuck by the highway, but it was seamless to open up. They done a credit check immediately, authorised an amount, and I've got a virtual card there and then to pay with. And if I don't want to use the card and I want to transfer the cash into the company account, I'm at liberty to do so. And I cancel my Amex on the back.
Yeah.
I think going back to talking about the BNPL stuff, bring that into sort of Lending 3.0. We talked about consumers, but I actually probably think it's the B2B space that's really going to benefit from that instantaneous, because it's so slow to get finance. If you're a business, to go down the traditional routes, flexible lines of credit and virtual cards, etc. They're just sort of surfacing now. I think
there's 5 million SMEs in the UK, and I think if you asked, a huge proportion of them would say that they feel underserved and undervalued by their incumbent legacy banks, and that's why they're looking. It's very difficult for those legacy banks to make decisions and serve those businesses in a profitable way, because they've got legacy processes, they're not tech forward. It's a lot of manual processes, and so it's ripe for kind of disruption through the fintech space. I think you make a great point about BNPL. I mean, I know personally for myself, if even for those larger transactions, you're buying a holiday for $2,000 or $3,000 or something like that. I very much see the attraction of trying to, paying that in 4 equal installments and being able to manage your budget. So I think, I think it's really interesting. It's driven because those existing products and services are just not meeting customers' expectations.
Absolutely. I mean, we work in partnership with one of our clients. We did a market research piece, and when we asked them the question, if you wanted additional finance, what would you do? How would you go about raising some instantaneous cash? Every single one said, we'll put it on a personal credit card. And these are business owners operating businesses between 500,000 and 5 million.
Yeah.
You could argue, well, there's a lack of education there, but I think that lack of education is stemmed on the back of lack of options and capabilities.
I mean, working capital is the biggest single restrictor of economic growth, I reckon, in many ways. And for those SMEs, in the old world, if you're selling on a marketplace, for example, if you have to wait all the time for your to sell your stock and get the money back in before you can replenish your supply chain, you're just slowing down and restricting your growth. If you can get access to affordable, quick working capital, and you can reduce that kind of supply chain, it's huge for a business, and you can accelerate your growth considerably. And I think lots of people know it's a problem, but so far not many people have been able to solve it. And I think that focus on B2B will be big over the next few years.
For that particular problem for a marketplace, they're actually a client of ours called Storefund. They are a financing platform for Amazon sellers. Really interesting product. When I first came across it, I was like, it was one of those, if you're not really in that world, you're like, is this really a problem? And then I think they raised something ridiculous, like 400 million or something like that for debt. And the answer was obviously, yes, it is a serious problem. And as more and more people are moving online, we've got more of these marketplaces now. And I suppose these, almost like micro businesses, I think it's a massive, massive area for growth.
I know the guys at Storefund, actually. Someone who, I've met them a few times. A guy that used to work for me is now the chief revenue officer. It's good business. I like it, yeah.
So solid guys, great idea. Yeah. That leads us really nicely onto talking about sort of Marqeta's growth. I suppose sort of a two-part question there, really. You're obviously, you've arrived to drive the international expansion for Marqeta without obviously sharing away any sort of, dark secrets or anything at all like that. How does a business such as Marqeta that's, already pretty large and pretty successful, how do they begin to sort of drive growth in, internationally and outside of the States? What's your game plan?
Fundamentally, we're a B2B business, so we're doing less kind of direct consumer marketing. We're doing less of those, I guess, traditional paid marketing tactics, et cetera, on Google. We're very much focusing on building our brand awareness, leading in kind of content and thought leadership. We rely very heavily on our clients, kind of testimonials. We believe in kind of showing, not telling. So it's kind of the proof is in the pudding. And when I joined Marqeta, one of the things that struck me from day one when I was meeting clients was previously when I've kind of had these meetings, it kind of goes into, you're not doing this, and I need you to do this, and you can improve this. It was very much with Marqeta was, we love you, we just want you to do more, because we're quite focused on issuer processing, but our clients have broader needs than that, and so they're kind of pushing us to go into new markets or to provide different capabilities. So that's kind of where we focus, and then obviously we're also focused continually on being the industry experts and making sure that our product is market leading. We became successful because we created a new category in the market, and we need to make sure that we continue to kind of push the boundaries in the space that we're in. So that drives, I think, a lot of the growth. Internationally, we want to take what's transparently a richer product set in the US and kind of replicate that in overseas markets. And we also think one of our key advantages is the fact that we are a truly global company. It's a single global platform, one integration into our APIs, and that enables you to launch in any of our 40 markets. And so that's very different to a lot of the competitors that we see in our space, and a lot of our clients have international growth aspirations. And so it's how do we work with them to help them go overseas. And I think the final piece is just, around that kind of product innovation and constant kind of understanding the customer needs, what's their problems, how can we help them differentiate themselves from the market. And, we talked earlier a bit around tokenization and how you put cards into your wallet and having to download the app, etc. We just launched a couple of weeks ago what we call web push provisioning, which actually for the right customer allows you to bypass the app. So you can go directly from a desktop, create your virtual card and push that directly into your Apple Wallet without having to download an app, add all the details, etc. And again, it's things like that which remove further steps of friction, which I think really keeps Marqeta ahead of the game. So it's important that we keep that laser focus on doing what we're renowned at and has made us successful. We continue to kind of focus on that and lead the market.
I suppose one final question: what does the future hold for Marqeta?
I'm pretty bullish. I think it's a super exciting future for Marqeta. I've been very impressed with, the team, the culture, the ambition, the pace at which kind of the business works. And I think all of those attributes, set us up well for success. I think in the US, we've completed our first acquisition of a business called Power, which is a full program manager in the credit space. So we're looking to disrupt kind of credit cards in the same way that we've disrupted debit and prepaid. We think there's a massive opportunity there. Internationally, as I said, I think it's about entering more markets and bringing some of the capability that we have into the US, into new markets. I think one of the trends that we're seeing is customers wanting more of a one-stop shop. I think, the genesis of fintech saw a disaggregation of services because incumbents weren't meeting customer needs. I think we're almost seeing the other side of that now, whereas those that have been successful are looking to broaden out, and I think we'll see an extrapolation of kind of services and clients that want to deal with one partner rather than several. So I think Marqeta will continue to look at that. In the US, we've already kind of kicked off our banking, or Marqeta for banking. I'm super excited about what the future holds, and I think this period of uncertainty that we're currently in, while we need to be careful of that, probably provides lots of opportunities for a well-positioned business like Marqeta that's got great product market fit.
I mean, we were just talking about the economic piece before we sort of click the record button, and the market's had a bit of a wobble, but I think it's one of those things where the tree has been shaken and the loose fruit has fallen out. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. There were points where valuations were getting a bit crazy, and as long as you had the word fintech in your deck, you were getting funded. But I think we're going to see a lot more companies of substance popping up.
Historically, when there's been these, as you call them, wobbles in the market, we've typically seen it be the source of a new wave of innovation, and those that survive come out stronger. So it's going to be difficult for some, but I think in the whole, it's probably a good thing for the industry.
Yeah, I was on Twitter and someone made a good comment that there's a lot of engineers out in the US that have been let go, but they've been on incredibly high salaries, and because of, I suppose, the pandemic, they were able to relocate. So a lot of them are moved into much, much sort of, I won't say cheaper, but more cost-efficient places, basically out of San Francisco. So you've got a lot of individuals who are highly paid, who've saved a lot of money, who have spent a lot of time in some very, very sort of disruptive companies, now effectively left to their own devices. And I think that's going to be really, really interesting to see what they will come up with.
Yeah, it could be the next wave of innovation. I think you're right.
Yeah, let's jump into a quick fire round. What podcasts are you listening to at the moment?
So work-wise, probably like many others, I listen to Fintech Insider, the 11FS podcast quite a lot. Fintech Daydreaming is another one that I quite like. On the personal side, I'm a Man United fan, so I listen to Talk of the Devils, which is kind of a regular podcast that talks about the ins and outs of Old Trafford, and unfortunately recently 7-0 drubbing by Liverpool.
I won't say anything. I'm an Arsenal fan. What's your favourite fintech app?
I lived in Australia for a few years, and I'm quite close to a business called Stake, which is an Australian share trading business, a bit like Robinhood for overseas. I think that's an awesome business and got a great future. They're looking to kind of mature beyond their current space into more of a modern Charles Schwab. Great leader there called Matt, is a brilliant founder. So I love that business. There's a business in Asia called NomuPay, which is kind of focused on Southeast Asia in terms of payments, and really looking to kind of pull together, I guess, one API, one integration for payment acceptance, payouts, APMs, etc. And given the fragmentation of Southeast Asia, I think that's kind of got a lot of value, but quite complex given the market over there. But yeah, there's lots. I mean, we've got some great clients ourselves. You may have mentioned Capital on Tap is a great client. We've got some brilliant clients, Moss at expense payments management. Twisto I just met recently in Czech Republic. I mean, there's so many out there. It's exciting times.
What books are you currently reading, or would you recommend?
I do more audio books than reading themselves, but I'm listening to the Cashless Revolution at the moment, which is around mobile wallets in China. It's quite interesting. And actually, a book I'm just about to start called Strength to Strength, which apparently tells you how your skill set changes as you get older, and you need to adapt and recognize that you're no longer infallible like you thought you were. So I need to try and see what that tells me.
Wait, I'm not infallible? I'll give that a read. I can see where that's coming from. What's the best bit of life advice you've ever received?
Well, I get a lot of advice. I'm not sure that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's so easy to get swept away in terms of where you're trying to get to, and I think always looking at kind of what the future looks like. And I think I've just had my third kid, which has kind of brought this home a lot. It's kind of focus on the journey, not the destination. Enjoy now, enjoy the present. No one really knows what that future's going to hold. And if you get to the end of the destination too soon, what are you going to do then? So just try and enjoy the journey.
Amazing. And my last question, and probably my favourite, what's one thing that I haven't asked that perhaps I should have?
Do I have kids, maybe? Or well, I do have kids. I have 3 kids, 3 daughters.
Yeah. 3 daughters?
3 daughters, yeah. I've got a 6, a 4, and a 3-month-old. That's what keeps me busy, and recognizing that there's more to life than work.
Absolutely. I've got two boys, a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. And yes, absolutely. There's no time to think about work on the weekends when you've got a couple of young ones, exactly. Which is a good thing, I think.
And actually, with the working from home thing now, it's kind of they increasingly become part of your work life as well. The amount of times that they pop their head in the corner of the camera and see who's on the other side, it's pretty cool.
I actually really, really like that. I think it's made people more human. And there's been a number of times we've been on serious calls, and the little one's popped his head up, and actually it's really, really nice.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Love it. Jeff, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Really appreciate the time, and thanks for having me.
The FML podcast is brought to you by Growth Gorilla. To find out how our marketing growth experts can boost your fintech's growth, head to growthgorilla.co.uk. And make sure to search for the FML podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Don't forget to click follow to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Growth Gorilla, thanks for listening.